more about the accusations being put forward against the River State governor. Why was he targeted, do you think?
Thank you for having me on the show, and it's a pleasure to join you all the way from Abuja in the nation's capital. Yes, it's in my mind, the reason why the governor and the Rivers State Assembly were targeted is extremely political, because, there's a threshold, a democratic threshold, stipulated in the Constitution under Section 305 of our Constitution, 1999 as amended, that while it is considered that the President and Commander-in-Chief has the powers to declare state of emergency, however, there is a constitutional threshold, which is more or less like a condition precedent in that section, that there must be certain grounds for the declaration of the state of emergency. For instance, during wartime, or when there's a fear of invasion of our nation, or when there has been complete breakdown of law and order, or when there's fear or apprehension of invasion of the country, or maybe during natural disasters, when maybe a state of emergency is needed to declare, for instance, during COVID, to avoid spread, or during natural disasters, or when there's serious threats to the nation or to any region or different parts of it. So then, if those things are present, then that threshold will have been fulfilled and the condition precedent will have been met. Then the president cannot declare state of emergency in line with the provision of Section 305, and the president must seek and get approval of 2/3 majority of the National Assembly. And even at that, even when the state of emergency has been so declared, rightly declared in line with the provision of the Constitution, that state of emergency does not serve as a stay against the governor from performing his constitutional duties as governor, because the governor, just like the president, is an elected official by the people. The governor cannot be suspended so moto via a press conference by the president. Just like the way nobody can suspend the president via a press conference, because he's an elected representative of the people. Both the governor and the members of the State House of Assembly are elected members of both parliament and the executive arm of that state. And the only grounds upon removal of a governor has been captured in Section 188 of our Constitution. The procedures for removing a governor is via an impeachment proceedings. That has not been done in this case. The other exceptional circumstance where a governor might be removed is by the court during an election petition proceedings or a pre-election matter. Those two instances that I just referenced earlier have not arisen. That is not the case in the instant situation. But the president has gone ultra-vires the Constitution and outside his powers. The powers given to the president under Section 305 of our Constitution are not at large. The president cannot just unilaterally remove the governor. It is indeed laughable, because things like this can only happen in Nigeria or Africa, where the people do not have respect or regard for rule of law or constitutional democracy. Can President Trump, the president of the United States of America, can he remove the governor of California via a press conference? The answer is in the negative.
Barrister Deji Adeyanju, human rights lawyer and a civil rights activist, thank you for that analysis.
Thank you for having me.
What do you make of the constitutional angle, the legal background to this issue?
From the legal angle, I see, for me, I was literally surprised at the speech of the president. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu practically played his card out. It now dawned on us Nigerians that it wasn't Wike that was fighting Fubara, but Wike was merely just a tool. The battle was actually between Tinubu and Fubara.
But he made efforts to resolve the issue.
When he made efforts, he called them for a meeting and he told Fubara to stoop low to conquer. That is to say, he should make provisions for all of those commissioners that left his government. Fubara insisted and gave provisions for them to come back. He made an appeal for them to come back in a bid for trying to reconstitute a sane governance. Then he gave a Supreme Court judgment that was not a reflection of justice. People had said that that's when you go to court and ask for a court of A, B, C, and the court declares and gives you A, B, C, and D. And even as I speak with you now, some of the Supreme Court judges have gone behind the scene to review that judgment and say there's an erroneous disposition in that judgment. It's not a reflection of justice. And yet, the man, in all humility, still said he was willing to implement the judgment in total. It was as though they said, maybe, first of all, this guy will not take our instructions. They gave him instruction, could not swallow. Later, they came back, they gave him a Supreme Court judgment that was almost impossible for him to implement. He said he will. You see Fubara in humility. People even started losing interest that this man can't fight. This man does not have the power to stand strong and defend himself. He went to the House of Assembly in a bid to present. When we saw that they botched the effort and they left the House of Assembly in a bid to frustrate the mass efforts. And today we've got to this point. See, when you talk about Section 308, there are conditions that necessitate the declaration of state of emergency. The first one of them is that there must be either war, insurrection, civil unrest that will lead to the complete breakdown of law and order.
So when you're expecting to win.
No, listen to me. That is what the law says.
Yes.
There is war, insurrection, civil unrest, complete. I didn't write the constitution. Constitution was written at a supreme level to guide us. It's complete. There was no complete breakdown for that. There was no war, there was no legislation. The other option was that it would be a natural disaster that will lead to a public unrest, health unrest, or public health emergency. There was nothing like that. The third one was that there would not be a situation whereby the state government cannot function. That was the so we saw that there was a deliberate and a cooked up attempt to look for the slightest provocation to invoke because even the threshold for the declaration of a state of emergency was not met. They cornered this thing, who did the way to blow up pipeline. They blew the pipeline around in the morning or yesterday evening, and the next minute you are declaring state of emergency without doing proper investigation to ascertain the validity or the extent at which it happened. It was the same Wike who opened his mouth and made these unguided statements that infuriated the judge, who called them minorities, said they don't have the capacity to produce a governor anywhere. And that's what has infuriated us. So we see this daily attempt, and you see what makes it very irritating. The man went behind the guys to say because there's no state of emergency that the man starts suspended. And I dare say there is no provision in the Nigerian constitution that empowers the president to unilaterally suspend a governor. Directly or indirectly, and there are legal precedents to it. Obasanjo did it in 2004 and 2006 when he suspended the governor of Plateau State because there was a killings, intertribal wars and court killings. He did it in the case of Ayodele Fayose, and we also know what happened in the court when it was challenged in the court. The thing fell flat; it could not stand. Tinubu, now who claimed to be a Democrat, has now engaged in destroying the structure because there wasn't a judgment. We saw the judgment in 2006 between the Akata General, the Attorney General of Lagos State, and the Attorney General of the Federation, when the Supreme Court ruled that it was unconstitutional for the president to meddle into the affairs of the state. We've seen another president between 2014, Fawemi and the Abacha. When the Supreme Court also ruled that even in a state of emergency, the president must follow due process. What I still want to advise Fubara is that Fubara needs to understand these intricacies of governance. That first of all, before it will take like 2 days before a minimum of 2 days for the House of Assembly to ratify the state of emergency, and if they were in recess, it will take over like 10 days. Fubara should take this opportunity to challenge this in the court. We should find a suit at the Supreme Court challenging the suspension. His own suspension by the president unilaterally without any provisional constitution. Secondly, he will now file an injunction, an interim injunction, restraining the president from appointing an administrator over Rivers State because that thing is totally unconstitutional and not required. We will restrain him and also restrain the federal government from using the federal security agencies from intimidating or implementing the state of emergency so that he too can hold sway. He has to defend himself because what we want here in democracy is not the dictatorship where one man holds sway and cannot. If you look clearly, see, if you go and visit what it takes to remove a city governor, there are only four provisions. The first one of them is in section 188, where it says an impeachment process, where 1/3 of the House of Assembly must raise a motion. There's a motion of gross misconduct or abuse or illegality, and the Chief Justice will set up a committee, a 7-man committee that will investigate and revert back to the House, and 2/3 majority will sign to get the governor out. That's the impeachment. The second one is the issue of incapacitation, when the governor is no longer capacity, don't have the capacity to preside, maybe he's mentally derailed or he's sick. The State Executive Council can come together. That one is in section 189. The state can come together and write to the House of Assembly that this governor can no longer perform, and they will prove medical results, health results to show that the man is incapacitated. That's the second one. The third one is the issue of resignation. In section 305, the governor can 306 rather, the governor can write to the House of Assembly that is resigning, that they no longer want to run for any reason best known to him, then the governor will step down. There is a third one, we call the issue of death. Either the guy dies or the issue of falsification, where maybe the governor is dead, he can no longer function, or apparently there was a falsification of result, maybe he did a wrong age declaration, wrong as education certificate, or maybe he lied on that oath, any falsification, or he was an ex-convict. Those are the only provisions in the constitution that makes it possible for a governor to be ejected by a peace proceed. There's nowhere where these guys can be used. So what I see is a direct attack on democracy, a usurpation on the powers of the state government, and an effort to destroy what is left of this national democracy.
All right, let me
tools of politics.
The governor cannot remove an elected chairman or councillor of a local government served by the Supreme Court, and the president removes section 305 allows the president to declare a state of emergency in the entire federation. If the country is at war, now who is going to prosecute the war? Will the president resign, or I hereby remove myself? Relevant provisions of the Constitution. I was making the point that there are 320 sections of the Constitution. Nowhere is the president empowered to remove the governor of a state, or suspend the governor of a state, suspend the deputy governor of a state, suspend the legislators in a state. Incidentally, the current administration, the current Bola Tinubu administration, sued the 36 state governors last year, or state government, over the removal of the dissolution of elected local government councils and replacement with sole administrators or caretaker committees. The Supreme Court, 7 justices unanimously heard on that point that it is illegal and unconstitutional to governors to remove elected chairmen and councillors. It stands to reason that the president of the republic cannot remove an elected governor or suspend legislature. It is stated in section 11 section 4 for the avoidance of doubt that even when the National Assembly takes over the legislative functions of a state to make laws because the House of Assembly is unable to see, it is stated there that provided that the governor and the deputy governor shall not be removed from office. So, I mean, you can only remove a governor by or suspend a governor either on ground that is indisposed. If a governor resigns, he can be removed. If he dies in office, the office becomes vacant. In the case of Plateau State, President Obasanjo accused Governor Dari of not taking appropriate steps. Before then, President Obasanjo warned that he was going to impose a sort of emergency on Lagos in the year 2000. Governor Tinubu, as it then was, came out to warn the president that will not be allowed in Lagos and that Nigeria will not be, the democracy should not be derailed in our country. In 2013, because of insurgency in the Northeast, President Jonathan imposed a state of emergency on 3 states, Adamawa, Borno, and Yobe. He was under pressure by anti-democratic forces. Remove the governor. And some of us came out to say, Mr. President, it is not permissible under the Constitution. And we challenge the people who are asking you to remove governors to point out the section. They refer to Section 305. Section 305 empowers the president to adopt extraordinary measures to restore a state of law and order, either in a state or in the entire federation. Are you suggesting that if a state of emergency is declared on the federation, pursuant to Section 305, will the National Assembly remove the president or the president will remove himself? So please, it happened even in 2021. The then Attorney General, Mr. Abubakar Malami announced that the federal government was going to impose a state of emergency on Anambra State. And that means they will remove the governor. We came out to say no, the president does not have such powers. And in fairness to President Muhammadu Buhari, he never did that. Of course, they claim that he had the suspicion.
Listen to that. Good. Now, international is aware of this issue.